Welcome everybody to another edition of Fantasy Golf Insider TV. My name is Jeff Bergerson. My screen name on daily fantasy sites is JT Bergerson. I'm joined by my partner, aka Mysteriously, on those same sites. I know we're going to have a lot of new viewers this week because of all the excitement around the PGA Championship this week, so we wanted to welcome you. We're from fantasygolfinsider.com, a website devoted strictly to fantasy golf. We don't dabble in it in the football off season. We are all golf all the time, 12 months of the year. And we want you to come check out our site, become a premium member because we got some awesome content on there. So today's show, we're going to start out giving a little recap about the WGC Classic last week, the Bridgestone. Before I kick it over to Zach for the recap, I got to give a couple shout outs to a couple Fantasy Golf Insider members who did well last week. I heard from a lot of you. Modified DFS took 5th place in the DraftKings $8,000 chip shot event. And Dan Sawyer, screen name Big D 453, took 49th in the Drive to the Green contest out of 153,000 on DraftKings. So congrats to you guys, congrats to all of our members on the success that I heard about last week. Let's keep it going. And our goal this week is the Millionaire Maker.
Yeah,
we got to get someone in the winner's circle from FGI. So we're going to give you the best info that we possibly can. Zachary, why don't you tell us a little bit about the event last week?
Well, the Bridgestone event went off well. It was another exciting finish. As usual, Jim Furyk could not close. Nobody was terribly surprised there. I think even when he was 4 strokes ahead after Friday's round, I wasn't shocked. I figured there would be a day where he went 2 or 3 over and somebody raced him down. What we really weren't expecting was for Shane Lowry to be that guy. I saw him kind of rallying up on Saturday and making a little bit of a move. I figured he was positioning himself for maybe a T12 or T15, a typical Lowry finish, and he raced all the way through to the end on Sunday.
Don't you wish he could have done that at the Open?
Yeah, I think I owned about 30% or so of his shares for the Open, but you know, bad weather kind of deterred him out there, and it does make things a little dicey for next week because I really liked him going into another links style course. Unfortunately, now everybody else is going to like him as well, coming off of the success there. So a good tournament. Overall, and then our picks on the week I thought were pretty strong. How'd you do, Jeff?
I did pretty well. Out of 4 sleepers that I listed, 3 of them were in the top 20. One was in the top, or I'm sorry, 2 were in the top 10. So you can't sneeze at that. We had Robert Streb, and basically we screamed from the rooftops about Brooks Koepka last week. I recommended him in the main column, Zach in his DraftKings column, Roger Casey in his Fantasy Aces column. We talked about him extensively in our webcast last year. So if you listened to us and you went with Brooks, he paid off big time last week.
Yeah, he had 83.5 points, so one of the top scorers, and he was actually the only player I think in the whole field that managed to post up 4 rounds of below 70 or better, earning 5 very key bonus points for all owners at the end. And it's just much tougher to do when it's only a par 70, and Brooks was able to do it. So for all of his inconsistencies within some of the rounds, he had 3 bogeys in a row on Friday, which took him out of the lead, and then 2 bogeys to end the round on Saturday, which kind of put him out of contention, but still managed to shoot under par for each round. So we just continue to say, find those guys that are going to score for you each week, and he's probably the best example out there.
It's all about DK points. It's all about accumulating. It's not so much about where you finish. It's how you get there and how you score, and Brooks Koepka is the poster child for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeffrey, who's our shot of the week going out to?
So my shot of the week is going to be Shane Lowry on the 18th hole. He strayed far from the fairway, shot from underneath a tree, and miraculously got it through to the green within a makeable putts distance, bouncing off branches. I like Shane Lowry, and I really appreciate guys who take care of their fitness.
He's definitely
we'll give
an athlete out there. We'll do a shot. Here's for you, Shane.
Cheers. Nice little Irish whiskey there, I think.
Excellent. Yeah, good stuff.
Right? All right. So, Millionaire Maker this week. We talked about that. Who are you starting out with, Zach, this week and building a team? Who do you like?
Well, I think I've been discussing this with you for the last few weeks. I think just the way that Jordan Spieth has played all year long, it would be very difficult for me to ignore him. Last week, in looking at some of the pricing, it was really difficult to get a guy like Spieth and then 5 other sleepers on your roster. This week, the opposite is true. The pricing is still soft at the top, but it's also soft at the bottom, which means you can get a guy like Spieth and you can put 2 or even a third other really high-quality player onto your roster without sacrificing a whole lot and having to kind of dig down into the basement in terms of the pricing. But what are some of the key stats that we're looking for out there?
So we're looking at total driving this week because what the comparison course that we're mainly looking at is Chambers Bay. They're very similar links style courses. We saw at the U.S. Open that the Bombers have an edge, but not at the expense of accuracy. So we're going to look at total driving, which is driving accuracy plus driving length. We're also going to look at greens and regulation, par 4 scoring, scrambling, and of course, putting. You gotta be able to putt to win a major.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back at this course, going into Whistling Straits, this is an area that has hosted the event before. Going back into 2010, Martin Keimer actually won the event in a playoff over Bubba Watson out there. So we do have a few players that are pretty experienced. You'll also remember DJ Dustin Johnson's first kind of infamous meltdown,
right?
Grounding his club in the sand.
What he thought was not a sand trap. He thought it was just a trampled area, but turns out it was definitely a trap, and he found out later that was a 2-stroke penalty, and he ended up out of the playoff by 2 strokes.
Sure, so the first sort of meltdown for DJ out there. So he's got some demons that he'll be looking to exercise out there as well. The other time that it was hosted there was 2004, so we're getting back there a little ways. Vijay Singh did win it that year, and there were a handful of players that played in the event that are still going to be playing here this year. I wouldn't look as closely at the history from 2004. The course has changed, the players have obviously changed, so probably don't put quite as much emphasis in your research on that. The other course that they played the championship on in 2012, it was Kiawah Island.
Yep.
That's pretty comparable to this style of course as well, links style course. It's got a lot of kind of ugly sand traps, a lot of long areas that just look almost like deserts in terms of the sand traps. So that's another good course that you can be looking at this week for a little more recent results as far as what's happened there.
And it was last there in 2012, and who won it?
In 2012, that would be Rory McIlroy, who's another interesting discussion item for us this week. But before we get into the players, one thing that we do want to do is to talk a little bit about the weather. The weather seems to be a major issue for most of the majors that we've looked at this year. Obviously, the Open, it was pretty big. And so we wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of a preview on what the forecast is looking like. Currently, there's a few things in the mix to be a little bit concerned about, but again, don't go making wholesale lineup changes based on the weather that we are looking at on Monday night or Tuesday morning. So currently, the Thursday forecast, we're looking at partly cloudy skies, high 86, and winds between 10 and 20 miles an hour. We do want to watch that closely. Gusty winds can be a pretty big factor. There's a handful of players out there, Rory McIlroy, who don't necessarily play all that well in real windy conditions. So that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the event. On Friday, we expect there to be a potential for some scattered thunderstorms. So again, when you're starting to look at tee times, if you see that there's going to be those thunderstorms in Friday afternoon, you may want to tilt your guys towards teeing off Thursday afternoon and then Friday morning, or vice versa, depending on when that weather rolls in. But again, just make sure it's something that you're checking week to week with your lineups, because we've seen a couple times this year where it has been a pretty major factor. So, what other kinds of things do we want to look at as far as strategies concerned for winning a Millionaire Maker event this week?
Well, as we've seen, I took a look at this in my tournament preview this week, is you're going to have guys that are all going to be in the top 20. And that's been the case in each Millionaire event up till this point. So a guy that's normally going to make the cut for you and take a T50 is not going to win the million for you. And really, the Millionaire Maker is so top heavy that we're going for the million. If we want to cash somewhere, we're going to go elsewhere for that. So we got to get everyone in the top 20, guys who have the potential to win it. And another thing we're looking at is what else?
Well, you don't necessarily want to look at guys who are going to be under-owned. That's a big thing to look for in smaller GPPs. It's something that we had discussed before, where you're playing against 40 people, like some of the qualifiers that we're in. you almost want to look at who is going to be under-owned, who's only going to be owned by one or two guys that week that are still a little bit under the radar. You know, with the Millionaire Maker, it's going to probably take the best combination of 6 players. So don't get too fixated on, you know, is this guy going to be 13% owned or 22% owned for the week? Because it's really not going to matter that much for the week. So try not to get too wrapped up in terms of that.
We've seen in the last couple that people who have won the Millionaire Maker have had guys on their rosters that have been heavily owned. Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson. They just mix in other guys who are maybe 2 guys on your roster that are under 5% owned. And I always like to say in these major events that the leaderboard is always littered with the studs. The big guys are always in the top 10. So pick a couple of them and then fill in around them. Maybe a couple good value guys and then a couple guys who are going to be owned by less than 5%. And if they do happen to jump up, like Mark Leishman at the Open, someone like that can help you win $1 million.
Yeah, that's why I would say, you know, don't anchor your team starting out with that 9,000, 8,000 range guys. Those lineups just they may hold up. It's just not as likely that they're going to hold up. It's fairly likely that one of those top 8 or 9 guys that you see up there is going to be in the lead. There's going to be 2 or 3 of them probably in the top 5 going near the end. And I think it brings us to another kind of interesting point when you talk about ownership levels. Is I guess it gets back a little bit with Brooks Koepka. We saw him; he was owned by a huge number of the field last week, and some of the contests I saw,
30%,
25 to 30%, somewhere in that range. But at some point, you don't care anymore. I mean, if you paid $8,400 for him last week and he put up 84 points, I don't care if he's owned by 70% of the field or if he's owned by 2% of the field. Yeah, you have to kind of start thinking in terms of, is there a situation where a guy he needs to be owned by you regardless of what his performance or what his ownership level is looking like. I think he's the perfect example just because they keep underpricing him every week. I mean, he's being priced really almost below what his point output is. He's 7,800 this week, and he's averaging almost 80 points a week fantasy-wise. So, you know, think in terms of not just how much a certain player is owned, but is he going to score so much that I almost can't afford not to own him in a certain week. So, you know, we've probably talked enough about Brooks. We obviously love
we're
Brooks.
Both high on Brooks.
But you know, some of the other guys that we looked at, I think the big mystery of the week is how is Rory McIlroy going to fare on that sprained ankle?
Well, I was watching extended coverage of Rory's practice round this weekend, which shows what kind of life I have. And he looked pretty good. He looked fine. He wasn't hobbly at all. Now that's a little bit different than walking 4 full rounds at Whistling Straits. So it's a wait and see thing. But I do think that if he can play and if he can come out 90%, I think he's worth rostering because he's going to be a good contrarian play this week. People are not going to be as on him. Now in the Millionaire Maker, you have a little bit more of the novice jumping in, and some of them might not even know that Rory was hurt, to be honest with you. So in the bigger contests where you have less people in the know, I would say he will probably be less owned, and I think it's a decent opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ankle, you don't really know what's going on with the ankle, but you know what he's done here in the past. In 2010, he had a 3rd place finish, Kiawah Island. He won that event, so he does play this style of course very well. Obviously, he's played link style pretty well over the years. You know, my theory is that he'll probably be owned in the bigger fields where there's more entries by somewhere in that 5 to 8% range. I think Jeff thinks maybe a little bit higher, closer to that 10% range. But this is probably going to be the best price that you're going to get him at for the lowest ownership level. So if you're willing to take a little bit of risk, I would say if you're building one roster for the Millionaire Maker, it's probably not worth taking a chance on Rory for the week. If you're building 100, which is actually the cap limit for this week, sprinkle them in, put them into 2, 3, 5 teams just in case. If he does pay off, if he does have that top 2 or top 5 type of finish that he's very capable of, you're going to be in the driver's seat as far as getting those extra points on the way. So, you know, it's kind of a mixed bag with Roy. How much risk do you really want to take for the potential upside reward? You know, another guy that I really like, he's a little further down on the price list, but it's Bubba Watson.
Yeah, Bubba. I like him to a point this week. What scares me about Bubba is he has a hard time dealing with adversity. And you talked about winds getting up to be 20 miles an hour, tough course.
Yeah.
We've seen Bubba melt down. He's missed the cut at both the U.S. Open on a tough course at Chambers Bay and the Open where he had some wind. If it's not 70 degrees and sunny with an easy course, Bubba tends to struggle. That being said, he did well in 2010 here. The length will obviously help him. He was drilling it down the fairway last week, so he looks like a good pick, but he scares me a little bit.
Yeah, he does scare me a little bit. You know, one of the things I think I want to address about Bubba that I like, though, is that his form really seems to have changed a lot from this year to last year. It's something I was chatting with a couple of our members earlier this afternoon. Is over the last few years, you know, Bubba was never really known much for being a scrambler or a putter.
Right.
Those are points of his game
this year
that have changed pretty dramatically. I mean, he still looks a little ridiculous getting out of the sand, which we saw at Chambers Bay was certainly an issue as he whiffed on a couple of shots and couldn't get it out of the rough a couple of times. But overall, that point of his game has really changed. You saw it this week with the WGC event. This is an event that he really had not done that well on over the past 10 years or so. I think his best finish was somewhere around 19th or 20th. This week he's lights out. He's pressing for the finish, and he's almost winning the event at the end. So those changes, those little changes in his game, I think really have helped him out. And when you look at how he plays for the rest of the year, you may see him on certain courses where he hasn't played as well, and you may want to reevaluate a little bit. His stats really jumped off the page last week, and I neglected him a little bit, just due to the fact that he really hadn't had that big finish at the course. So I like Bubba this week. His price is really right. You can put him in with another stud player and still have a lot of room as far as the salary cap. He's under $10,000 this week. So I'm really a big Bubba fan. You know, the guy I'm really having some trouble with after last week is Adam Scott.
Tell me. Adam Scott. So yeah, we were both really high on Adam Scott last week. We talked about it. We agreed on it. The only thing we were concerned about was his putting.
Yeah, funny thing, right?
He putted fine.
Yeah.
It was his tee to green game that really was awful last week. So are you going back to him this week? Do you feel comfortable?
I think so a little bit. It's dependent. The Millionaire Maker, it's going to be a little bit of a wash. There's going to be so many people who really haven't paid that close of attention like we have that I think ownership levels there will be fairly normalized. So I'll have some exposure to him. I mean, his game overall is on the upswing. He played well at the Open. He played well at the U.S. Open.
Yep. That's why I expected him to play well last week.
Yeah, with his history at links-style courses and big events, he's used to playing in this type of event. I don't feel uncomfortable putting him into a normal number of lineups for the week. So I'll have him in there. I may go a little bit heavier in some of the bigger events just because I feel like some of the minds that are kind of in the know are going to be a little bit frustrated with what they saw last week.
Right.
You get a +5 for the weekend. You get a T45 finish. And I think a lot of folks are probably going to be a little bit off them. So in that regard, I may shift a little bit of my exposure in some of those smaller games and in some of those bigger buy-in types of fields back towards Scott and looking for that kind of bounce back week for him.
So of that top tier of guys, who is your guy?
Well, I'm going to be going with Spieth. I think the guy's a champion. I think he plays well under the pressure. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes out that first day. The pressure is almost a little bit off of him at this point. You know, losing at the Open there, not getting that third major. Had he won at the Open and had come in with 3 straight majors with a chance to win a Grand Slam in 1 year, which has never been done before, I think the camera, the spotlight, it would have been pretty incredible for him to try to come out and play tough. But that said, Spieth is a pressure player. It seems like when the pressure picks up, Spieth's game really picks up as well. So I'm anchoring myself to Spieth this week. You know, I don't know if he'll win the event. I certainly think he's going to be in the top 10, though. He's not going to hurt any of the lineups that I have. Yeah. And with the prices the way that they are, I can stack so many other guys with him this week that if Justin Rose sneaks up and win it, if Bubba sneaks up and win it, he's not going to hurt my lineup with where he's at. So I'm going to start my lineups with Jordan Spieth. Who do you like to start your lineups with?
I like Spieth as well. I also like Justin Rose, the way he's playing. I like what I see from him, so I like him this week as well. Dropping down to the middle price guys, we talked about Koepka. Sure. Obviously, we both like him. Who else do you like there? I kind of like, I'll tell you, a guy is Danny Willett. And funny thing about Danny Willett is I found out on Friday that he's actually been struggling with some illness. And he started an antibiotic, and I guess it kicked in. And you can kind of see he had a win coming into the event, played well at the Open Championship. Didn't play real well, not terrible on Thursday, Friday last week, but then he shot 69s on both Saturday and Sunday. So maybe he was really sick and he just kind of fought through it. I'm expecting big things out of Danny Willett this week.
Pretty good at link style courses. Been playing pretty well in the link style events over in Europe. So I like him. You know, we already kind of discussed Lowry. That was going to be another pick that we brought up this week.
Yep.
There's really not much of a secret on that. I think looking at some of the other European players that are out there, Brandon Grace.
I like Grace.
That's another name that stands out.
Right.
Obviously had a very solid U.S. Open. He's been really good overseas this year. He's got a couple of wins under his belt. So with a price of $7,300, I think he's definitely one to take a look at. And really, the European players in general this week, I like those guys who have been playing quite a bit on this style of course, do tend to stand out. They do tend to up their games a little bit this time of year. Is there anybody that you're staying away from this week?
Gosh. Yeah, probably. You know, I've been flirting with Matt Kuchar in my lineup. I'm not really sure if I'm... He's played well on these type courses in the past, but this year he just doesn't have the current form.
He's a Pete Dye guy.
He is.
Really likes this type of course.
I think he's won 2 events on Pete Dye courses.
He's had good success. I think he was around, what did he take, around 10th or so in 2010? So he's had some good success, but you're not on him this week.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
All
Current
right.
form isn't enough for me.
I think I'm a little off of DJ this week, actually.
Are you?
I'm a little bit off of him.
You can't deal with that, huh?
Watching him struggle, I was really watching him close after the U.S. Open to see what was going to happen at the Open over in Scotland, and watching him over there, I thought he put the demons behind him. Round 1, round 2, he comes out, he's looking great, he's on fire, he's got a shot to win the event, and then the wheels absolutely come off on Saturday and Sunday.
I haven't seen a collapse like that in a long time.
And it's almost like he just gives up at a certain point, which is horrible as a fantasy owner to see. Okay, so your guy doesn't win the event. Big deal. He takes 5th, 7th, 10th, 12th, 53rd.
Right.
We got a problem. We got a problem. And he did the same thing this last week at the WGC. He races up the board Friday afternoon, -4. He's in 2nd place, 4 shots back. Saturday, +5. Sunday, +6. Now he's 50th place. He's lost a ton of points with him. I just don't know that he's got the mental game. He's got the mental makeup to hang in there. I won't completely fade him. I know I'll probably have him on a few of my 100 rosters that I put in for the Millionaire Maker. I just can't overweight the guy. And I don't even know that I can equal weight the guy, given his price and given his propensity for melting down in the middle of events.
Right.
So I'm a little bit off of a DJ this week.
How about sleepers? Who's intriguing you in the lower dollars?
We say his name almost every week. A lot of these guys, I know you hear it over and over again, but not enough people really get the message, so we have to say it over and over again. And you know how I'm going to say it?
Should we say it together? Robert Streb.
There he is. Yeah, he's our guy. He's dramatically underpriced again. He had a really rough spell in the middle of the season when the game went down to Florida. I think Florida golf, with all the water hazards, maybe didn't suit him particularly well for that style of course, because he started the year on fire. He hit that lull. Everybody jumped off the bandwagon, and then he kind of found his form again. And he's been fantastic since then. I mean, he's
outproduced his price most every week.
Every week. So I think he shot -6 last week, tied for 5th place.
And he's one of those guys opposite of DJ, where he doesn't pack it in if he's kind of out of it. He always seems to kind of climb up and get you a better finish, which is what you want.
Yeah, he's just kind of kept improving all the way through Sunday. It's -3, 4, 5, and ends up -6, and at 6,800 this week. Yeah, he's going to be widely owned, but he's a guy that I think you got to have on your roster, especially if you want to stack guys up at the top. You want to start off with a guy like Streb. So I like him as a sleeper. You know, the other guy that kind of leaps off the list way down at 6,000 is Pat Perez.
Pat Perez has been consistent this year. He's not a stranger to these events. He's played in big events. He's just been off and on. He's had an up and down career. But this year he seems to have tied it all together. Normally we're fleeing Pat Perez by late spring.
Yeah,
because
usually
he
plays well in California and Arizona. That West Coast stint, he's really strong. And then by this time of year, he's kind of going on vacation, but he's been really good so far.
He's just so cheap that he allows you to do so much with the rest of your lineup. And I can see him taking the top 20 and making it on a millionaire team.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anybody else down at the bottom that you kind of like?
Well, how about Jason Bone?
Yeah. Well, I've got something to say about Jason Bone this week. Roger Casey, I'm giving you the finger this week. Roger and I have been talking back and forth all day about Jason Bone, and Roger is completely off the bandwagon on Jason. I am completely on the bandwagon for Jason this week. Everything I've seen this year indicates that he's a new player this week. He's not going to be long off the tee for you, so he's certainly not going to impress you in terms of distance, but he's an accurate player. He hits greens. He's a good putter. He's one of the best players overall in terms of his long iron play. All things are going to be absolutely essential. So Roger, you called him a fraud today. You were spewing all this vitriol about him, all this hatred, all these lies, and I couldn't disagree with you more. And so we kind of came up with a little bit of a bet. I think we negotiated to the point where we got it down to a T42 or better. So Roger, I am going to take your bet on a T42 or better for Jason Bone this week.
And what are the stakes here?
I think I got to wear a funny shirt if I lose, and Roger's got to buy me king crab legs in Boston if I win. So it seems like a pretty reasonable bet.
Right. Speaking of Boston, you guys may have known, but we've qualified for the World Championship event out in Boston for the Deutsche Bank. So we're headed out there come Labor Day weekend, and we're going to try and bring home the title to FGI. Yeah,
and anybody else who's out there for the event, anybody on the East Coast or the Boston area, please make sure that you look us up while they're out there. We'd love to sit down, have a drink, talk a little bit of golf with you. We're going to be there for 5 days, so it should be a great time.
Should mention we're also headed out to Whistling Straits this weekend. So if you're going to be out in Kohler, Wisconsin, checking out the PGA Championship, hit us up on Twitter, shoot us an email, let us know. We'll have some cocktails together, hopefully toasting, because one of us will have won the $1 million on Sunday night. That's the goal. Another question I had that I wanted to just say, we've got a lot of inquiries about the polos that we wear. Fantasy Golf Insider polos, a lot of good feedback on those. So what I want to do is I want to offer a free polo to any one of our Fantasy Golf Insider members who finishes the best in the Millionaire Maker event. So if you finish well, shoot us an email, let us know where you finished in your DraftKings name. We'll send you one of these cool polos, and you can wear it and say how great our picks were this week.
Excellent. Before we go, I also wanted to send a shout out. Our good friend Mike Jordan over at Fanasurf. There's a big surfing contest out in Tahiti this week. You can go check out Mike's site. He's at Fanasurf. He's also at Surf Stats. I hear they're actually releasing sharks into the water to go after the surfers. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. It makes the contest about 10 times more exciting. I was all over it. One of my guys got attacked. He got away from the shark. I got 10 extra bonus points. So
sweet.
Pretty exciting stuff.
Fanasurf.
So make sure you go check out Fanasurf.
A couple other things. Please make sure to do us a favor. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It would help us a lot. Check us out, fantasygolfinsider.com. Hit us up on Twitter. Zach usually mans the Twitter. He's up all times of the night to answer your questions, lineup strategy, whatever it is. We're here to help you. If you ever have any other questions, feel free to email us directly. But that's all I got this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm
excited. We cover enough?
We got the last major of the year, one more Millionaire Maker. So
let's do it.
That, good luck, everybody.
Good luck, guys.
I'm Zach Turcotte, mysteriously.
Jeff Bergerson, JT Bergerson, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck. Roger Casey, our freelance writer for Fantasy Aces, I am giving you the finger today. Roger, the reason I'm giving you the finger today is due to your hatred this week, the vitriol that you've been spewing all day against one Jason Bone.
What was that word you used?
Vitriol.
Did you go to the thesaurus today and look that up?